Why do you think people on their deathbeds or their last words are so closely connected to their remembrance? It's because every veil has dropped now. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Really Good Coffee, Actually Good Coffee podcast, the show where we talk about all things coffee related, all while I drink a cup of coffee. Today I'm drinking a cappuccino with 6 shots in it from the counter at the Asbury Hotel. It is a wholesale partner of Made in Coffee Roasters, and might I say it is a fantastic, reliable product, even though it's a little bit more expensive than other coffee shops. This past week we sold 621 pounds of coffee total. If we're looking at last year's previous number, same week, we sold 691 pounds of coffee total. That is more coffee. And am I disappointed about that? Yeah, I am pretty disappointed about that, but that's okay because it leads me into the topic of today's episode, which is you need to have bad days. This is also piggybacking off of last week's episode, exhaustion is the gift of a hard day's work. That's also a quote from Alex Hermosi. I forgot to mention that last episode. I don't want to make that seem like it's my quote. It's his. He's this guy that I've been following along this whole journey. He gives really good advice when you're starting your own business or just in any work in general. So when I was bar backing at this restaurant called Porta in Asbury Park, I was looking to get into DJing. And finally, I got a hold of the guys that were DJing at Porta at the time and other restaurants or clubs in Asbury, and they told me that in order to be a DJ, you either need to be a very good DJ or you need to have some sort of social media following or just a combination of the two. So at the time, I didn't have either of those things. I deleted my Instagram because I was like an angsty teenager. So for me, that just seemed to make the most sense. So at the time, my sister was traveling in California. She was working out there and going to these different coffee shops and sending me these coffees. So I piggybacked off of Dave Portnoy's business model for the pizza reviews and just turned it into like a coffee thing, and it worked. I got a following. I put this ad out that kind of blew up that had to do with DJing, and they're like, all right, you're in, you're DJ now. So I was doing it. I was a DJ. I was starting to get gigs. What motivated me to do it at the time, I think this is actually something that no matter what you're doing, you need to have, which is your why. Like, why do you do this? What's your reasoning for it? It's why they say you need a mission statement or a business model when you're starting your own business. You need to have a framework set in place to know this is how we're going to go from A to B to C to D and hopefully beyond. And for me, there were multiple reasons, but the main one was during this time, my sister was going through cancer treatment and she was very weak. And stick with me because I know this sounds a little bit of a strange connection of the two, but she wasn't able to go out with her friends when they would go out in the city or they would, get together. She was too weak to do that. So for me, I thought, okay, well, if I could get this big and kind of blow it up, then I could have something for my sister to do on the weekends. It involved her to not have to even really talk to anyone. She could just hang out and feel like she's part of the whole thing. So that was the reason I was doing it at the time. And it got to a point pretty soon after that she was actually too weak to even come to these sets that I were doing, which for me at the time, it was like my foundation crumbled for multiple reasons, but one of them was my career choice that I had. I didn't have a reason for why I was doing this job anymore. And you need these times, you need these hard days to reassess where you are and understand whether it makes the most sense to keep pursuing this journey or divert and go a different route. And for me at the time, because I didn't have a reason, really a main reason for why I was doing it, I ultimately decided that I wasn't going to do it anymore. I was going to pursue coffee now. The other reason, obviously, is the situation that my sister was going through. I had somebody that I would go and talk to on a consistent basis and see their struggle with one of the most difficult things that you can go through in your life. And the amount of clarity and the perspective that she had was unmatched to anything else that I've ever seen or heard. The only thing that I can honestly compare it to is those mega billionaires that are driven by this idea that their business is such a force for good that they're not distracted by these other social media posts or coworkers that are a bother to them, because they have their priorities set so in place that they're unbothered by everything else in life. That's the only thing I can really compare it to make it make sense. It's like, why do you think people on their deathbeds or their last words are so closely connected to their remembrance? It's because every veil has dropped now. Their most true form is revealed. Every day is literally a fight for their life. So instinctually, their priorities are put in the proper place. Their life has become so simple in a sense that I honestly think it's why that there's such this push for this traditional lifestyle that people are now pursuing, to like go live on a farm and homestead. It's because people are now so disconnected from their jobs and their purpose in life. They don't know why they do it anymore. They've become so insignificant, and it makes sense. It's because it's a simpler lifestyle, and you just feel such a stronger connection to it. And again, it's going back to this idea of finding your why. It's like, why do I want Maiden to succeed? Of course, it's to make a great product, or of course, I would love the financial security or stability that comes with owning a good business. But when I'm able to, in a sense, put food on the table for the coffee farmers, or create a moment that somebody can look forward to once a week, because I know people that are like that, or potentially change the farming business model to cater it more towards the long-term sustainability rather than the business model that can, in a sense, hurt them in the long run, because it's based on this volume that they're pumping out without any real consideration with the soil that they're growing their product. That's when it starts to make sense to me. And I implore you to show me somebody that's able to go to bed at night feeling sorry for themselves once they are finally able to make that connection. And if they can, I promise it's more difficult. It's like, find out what your priorities are and make them a priority. If you want to make more money, then you're not going to be able to go out every weekend. Make it so that when you check your checking account every day, you don't feel that sense of anxiety after a long night out. And if you do know that now and you want to make more money, but you still do the things that make you spend money, you don't have any right to complain about it anymore. There's no ground to stand on. And that's just something you have to accept. And that's okay. That's just a priority that you've made in your life now that you have to stand by, because you don't act as if you care enough about your money. And that's all right, but that's just what it is. And the truth is, like, I don't think you need a family member to pass away or go through experience like this in order to realize it. It can be for any reason. It can be positive or negative. It could be for your mom or your dad or your boyfriend or girlfriend or your friends. It doesn't matter what the reason is. You just have to have a reason, and you have to have the bad days that you go through so you can assess why you're doing what you're doing and fall back on the mission statement or the business model that you've set in place to know what direction you're going in. It's why I ultimately couldn't become a DJ. I just couldn't make that connection anymore. I couldn't bridge the gap. So that's really it. Thank you guys for listening. I don't mean to make this episode so dark, but maybe somebody needed to hear it. I appreciate it, and I will talk to you guys again very soon.